you want more economic activity, investment, expansion and further growth in Northland, we have got to invest in infrastructure. Sure, it's taking a risk, but it's a bold thing to do. It's an old track, and quite frankly, being in that tunnel was eerie. It's got its own atmosphere. It's evident that there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm very impressed by the 90 odd million, how much actual infrastructure activity it's going to fund. Let's be honest, there is a lot of disappointment in Whangarei that we're not 4-laning. I'm very keen for us to start in Whangarei and certainly improve drastically the road to Marsden Point. But our party put its colours to the political mast that we would invest in rail, not necessarily to undermine roading, but we want both options for the north. The first thing in terms of commuter rail, obviously there's a focus on Hamilton. We will not be pursuing commuter rail to Whangarei until Kiwi Rail tells us it's absolutely safe enough to do. I would say to the Auckland Bellyacres, there's a substantial amount of money the government's already giving Auckland. This is a provincial play, and Phil Goff or John Tamihere knows that.
This landscape is about to change dramatically. Drilling is just the first step.
I'm now working with Kiwi Rail, fair dinkum, engineers. The drilling signifies we're getting ready to actually show picks and shovels and build the spur.
Marsden Point is the country's most northerly port. The line or rail spur will enable its expansion and means a more direct route for freight. It'll run across this farmland, travelling east from the existing North Auckland line at Oakleigh, just out of Whangarei, stretching across 20 kilometres to the port at Marsden Point.
For about the last 10 years, our council in the north has been buying land, so the landowners know that their land can be taken for the railway spur. We were elected to boost infrastructure in the regions. The engineers need to test whether or not there's additional funding required.
A feasibility study for the revival of Northland's rail network, including this port spur, was one of the concessions won by New Zealand First in its coalition deal with Labour.
We committed to meeting the capital costs of the Oakleigh railway spur to Marsden Point. $500,000 is happening on the broader challenges for the rail network north of Helensville, but in terms of the spur, viewers should consider it's a done deal. The drilling reflects the fact that construction is beginning.
These engineers are digging 30 metres underground, testing geotechnical conditions.
Well, that gives us that ability to finish off that detailed design. Once we've got that, then we can go out to tender and start looking at getting the works done.
This is going to be a huge project. 30,000 sleepers will need to be installed, and 1.6 million cubic metres of ground will need to be dug out. Kiwi Rail says it's going to take 4 to 5 years. The Minister says he'll be looking into how the project could be sped up, and these cows moved on. Helen Castle's One News.
Now, we seem to have dodged the COVID-19 bullet for now, but how do we escape with the economy intact? Paddy Gower says now's the time to think big.
The first wharf was constructed in Commercial Bay in the 1840s to help cart goods off wooden ships by horse and cart. The port has grown since those very early days, with land reclamation extending it further and further into the harbour. Auckland's waterfront looks very different to what it once did, with many now saying it is an eyesore, over capacity and needs to move.
100 years ago, the city grew around its port, but now the port is the last vestige of our 19th and 20th century industrial past.
I'm one who favours the port being shifted. This is probably the most valuable land in New Zealand. I'm very happy to be seeing proposals like shifting to Marsden Point seriously looked at.
Moving the port would free up areas for redevelopment.
Our harbour here in Auckland is one of its great assets, and at the moment that is blocked off in a pretty reasonable way by containers and Japanese imported cars and by a big red fence.
I'd like to see public space. Ideally, you would see museums, you'd see art, you'd see recreational possibilities. You might see a stadium there. We're simply not making the most of our waterfront.
A report by a supply chain strategy working group for the Ministry of Transport states that the Port of Auckland's CBD freight operation is no longer economically or environmentally viable. It's a win for all Kiwi taxpayers, local ratepayers, and should be rezoned for better uses. These changes need to begin now with a target of 15 years to complete. It would reduce traffic congestion, enrich Auckland by $6 billion while creating thousands of jobs up north.
All three Upper North Island regions will benefit. Tauranga will get more business, Auckland will have its waterfront back, and Whangarei will be developed.
Very importantly, an improvement from the social deprivation statistics of Northland, which have been crippling Northland and that all of New Zealand has been paying for a very, very long time.
But of course, not everyone is on board. We reached out to the Ports of Auckland, who passed us on to Auckland Council.
I've always supported moving the Ports of Auckland as it outgrows its footprint in the centre of town. And in fact, I called for the study that has now been produced to say, well, what are the options and what are the pros and cons of each? Unfortunately, this study is really poor quality. Treasury reported that it was out in its cost estimates by some billions of dollars. It never established a decent business case to spend what's going to be, $10 to $12 billion on relocating to Northland.
And Phil Goff isn't the only one who's dubious.
What we found out through COVID-19 is that actually the supply chains are really, really important. And the ports in New Zealand have done a great job making sure that the goods get into our communities and get to the supermarkets and so on. It's really important that we don't go around disrupting what is actually a pretty good and reliable system.
Make no mistake, this would be a massive job, but it would happen over many years. It would include a new rail line and 4-lane highway connecting Auckland to Whangarei, allowing goods to be distributed across the country. It's estimated to cost $10 billion.
Actually staying there's no free lunch. I think it costs you $8 billion over the time frame to stay there. But to me, then you start saying, okay, if we're really talking about this costs a couple of $1 billion, and by any definition, moving a port, it might be a 10 or 15 year project. Well, in that 15-year period, the government of New Zealand will spend about $1 trillion. So $2 billion, yeah, okay, it's a lot, but Auckland's going to be a big city by then.
Shifting the port isn't just seen as creating a boost for Northland, it's the type of big-scale project that would help keep the entire economy stay afloat after COVID-19.
The time is right now, and the opportunity has never been greater than it is at present to be setting a course for the next 100 years.
The world's changing because of COVID-19, and anyway because of our changing demands, and why wouldn't we use out of adversity comes opportunity?
It's a good question. It's a really interesting idea. And Paddy, you're obviously a supporter of moving the port.
Yeah, I think it would be absolutely awesome to move the port and move it up north, unlock Auckland's waterfront and unleash Northland's economy. But do you know what I really, really like about it, guys?
Go on.
I like the fact that it's a big idea.
Yeah.
It's a big idea. It's a vision, and that's the kind of thing we need now in post COVID-19. New Zealand needs to have a vision for once, and that's what I'm really keen on.
I think maybe come up with an original idea instead of this one.
Around.
Like 75% of our imports.
No, I'll just grab
75% of what comes to Auckland goes to Auckland. And you're talking about shifting it up to Northland so that we then have to transport it a couple of 100 kilometres back to where most of it actually ends up. It seems illogical. You're better than this, Paddy. You can come up with a brand new idea. You don't need this port shifting things.
I've been working the whole lockdown on this, Jeremy. Don't just blow it out of the water in one go. This is my big idea. Oh, man, this sucks.
No, I'm with you, Paddy. I do think it would be beautiful to see a change like that. I'm just sorry that you didn't come up with it at the start of lockdown, because then we all could have just pitched in while we were at home doing nothing, doing no work. We could have bloody carried the containers up there ourselves.
Yeah. Hey, heaps to think about there. Please thank Paddy Gower. Cheers, Paddy.
Ultimately, that final report needs to come in. I think all parties probably have been pretty clear that port infrastructure is not something that ever changes overnight, nor should it. These are huge investments. They need to be long-term decisions, and they need to have infrastructure to support them. I've always personally been of the view that it's an inevitability that at some point we will see a relocation of Auckland Point at some point. The question really becomes where and on what time frame.
But what's the deal with New Zealand First in this term of government?
The
Is
deal
it
was
only the report?
Of course, you will have seen in the coalition agreement, we undertook that we would complete the study, and we will. We're 2 out of 3 in, so we've still got the final report to come.
And beyond that, nothing in this term?
I'm not going to make commitments beyond having received the final report, because we of course need to see, what evidence has been compiled, what the report tells us.
Which leaves Auckland Council a bit up in the air with the future of the port.
But they've been up in the air with the future of the port for some time now. And look, this is a debate that was being had under the last government. What I'd like to think they're seeing progress on is us actually collating some of the evidence, having the conversation around the future. Ultimately, before that, there was none of that conversation, and yet I do think there's an inevitability that we need to confront.
When the final report goes to Cabinet, is there a decision on it, or does it just simply get read and put in the box?
That's something for Cabinet. We haven't set out a timeline beyond receiving the report at this stage.